In the middle of a 17th century winter, a soldier shuts himself away in a small stove-heated room and spends hours thinking alone. He decides to doubt almost everything he had ever learned in school because he refuses to accept anything as true unless he is truly certain of it. Outside, a war rages on, but inside his own mind, he wages a far quieter and far more lasting war of his own. Out of these solitary days of thought comes a method that would shape the next 4 centuries. This man is Descartes, and the small book he wrote would change the course of the history of philosophy. Let me tell you the story. René Descartes was born in 1596 in France. He received a fine education and studied law, though his true passion lay in mathematics and the natural sciences, and from a young age he stood apart from other students in his hunger for certain, provable knowledge. As a young man, following the custom of his time, he served first in the Dutch army and then in the Bavarian army, traveling the length and breadth of Europe during the years of the 30 Years' War. Those years as a soldier gave him less an education in battle than an opportunity to observe the peoples, customs, and ways of thinking of many different countries. In his own words, he came to experience firsthand the difference between knowledge learned from books and knowledge learned from the world itself. According to his biographers, in 1619, in what is now Germany, sheltering from the winter cold in a small stove-heated room, he experienced a series of dreams in quick succession that proved transformative for him. Descartes would remember those days as the turning point at which he laid the foundation of his own philosophical method. After this experience, Descartes spent years traveling through various countries, but he eventually settled in the Dutch Republic, a relatively tolerant and calm place for the era, and lived there for roughly 20 years, moving house frequently and living an almost secluded existence. He chose this solitude deliberately, since serious thinking required him to stay apart from crowds and everyday social obligations, and the Dutch Republic's comparatively tolerant intellectual climate, with church and universities less oppressive than elsewhere in Europe, made it easier for him to work in relative peace, developing ideas that ran against tradition with a measure of real safety. When he published the Discourse on the Method in 1637, he deliberately chose to write it not in Latin, but in French. Up to that point, serious philosophical and scientific works were almost without exception written in Latin, but Descartes wanted his ideas to reach not only university scholars, but also ordinary educated readers who could read French. The book was in fact originally designed as a preface to 3 scientific essays on optics, meteorology, and geometry. But this preface proved so powerful and so original in its own right that it came over time to be regarded as an independent masterpiece. Those 3 scientific essays reveal that Descartes was not merely a philosopher, but also a leading natural scientist and mathematician of his time, and the method he introduces in the preface forms the foundation for that scientific work as well. The book opens with Descartes narrating his own intellectual life story, confessing that he came to realize much of what he had learned in school did not rest on nearly as solid a foundation as he had once assumed. He makes this confession with real humility, taking care to note that he is not presenting himself as superior to other thinkers, but simply describing how he organized his own mind, and that no one is obliged to follow the same path. For that reason, he resolves to rebuild knowledge from scratch on a solid foundation, and proposes 4 simple rules for doing so. The first rule is never to accept anything as true unless you clearly and certainly know it to be so, avoiding prejudice and hasty conclusions. The second rule is to divide every difficulty encountered into as many small parts as can be resolved. The third rule is to order one's thoughts, moving from the simplest matters to the most complex. The fourth rule is to make complete reviews so thorough that nothing whatsoever is overlooked. To apply this method, Descartes first resolves to doubt everything that can possibly be doubted, doubting that his senses might deceive him, and even doubting that his belief in the existence of the outside world might be false. Reasoning from the fact that things experienced in a dream can feel entirely real, he considers that his present experience itself might be indistinguishable from a dream, and concludes that he must never blindly trust any piece of knowledge that rests on the senses alone. But in the middle of this radical process of doubt, he realizes he cannot deny that the very thing doing the doubting, himself, must exist, because doubting is itself a form of thinking, and the fact of thinking is proof of existing. The book's most famous line appears at exactly this point: "I think, therefore I am." Descartes uses this single certainty as a cornerstone on which to build new knowledge. The book also contains his own reasoning concerning the existence of God, the distinction between mind and body, and his thoughts on how the natural sciences might advance through this new method. Descartes treats mind and body as two fundamentally different substances. The mind is a thinking, immaterial thing, while the body is more like a machine occupying space and obeying mechanical laws. That distinction would go on to inspire both great admiration and intense philosophical argument in the centuries that followed, since the question of exactly how mind and body interact remained unresolved for a very long time. What keeps this book readable today is the timeless practicality of the method Descartes proposes. Breaking a complex problem into small parts, questioning assumptions, and ordering thoughts from simple to complex, these principles still hold up across science, engineering, everyday decision-making, and personal growth. Descartes' courage in setting aside everything he was not certain of and starting again from zero remains a powerful example, inviting the reader to question their own assumptions, and it is not at all hard to find traces of these 4 simple rules at the root of almost any modern approach to problem solving. That is why the book still serves as a reference, not only in the history of philosophy, but among texts on critical thinking as well. The book's short, plain, almost diary-like personal style adds to its staying power. Rather than heavy academic language, Descartes speaks like a friend narrating his own life story, a tone that can draw in even a reader with no prior interest in philosophy at all. There are some interesting details in Descartes' biography. He is remembered as the father of modern philosophy, and is also considered one of the founders of analytic geometry, having given his name to the coordinate system still used in mathematics today. This system, which lets the position of a point be expressed with 2 numbers, merged algebra and geometry to open a new era in mathematics, and it is still taught in schools around the world. Late in his life, at the invitation of Queen Christina of Sweden, he traveled to Stockholm to give her lessons in philosophy. But the Queen wanted the lessons held in the very early morning, and having to rise early in this cold northern climate he was unaccustomed to took a severe toll on his health. He soon contracted pneumonia and died in Stockholm in 1650, far from the Dutch Republic he had so carefully preserved for years as a home for a calm and quiet life, in the depths of a cold northern winter. Even after Descartes' death, the debates did not end. The Church viewed some of his works with suspicion for years, though that suspicion never managed to stop his ideas from spreading across Europe. That many universities still begin their philosophy curriculum with this very book is the clearest sign that Descartes is regarded as the starting point of modern thought. We have told the story of the discourse on the method. Descartes' courage in rebuilding his own mind from nothing continues to inspire centuries later. A mind willing to question everything can, in the end, build something new and far more solid on top of it. If you would like to hear the complete book as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Do not forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. See you in the next book. Until then, do as Descartes did and question your own assumptions once more.